The call that ended his marriage came not from a rival gang, but from a hospital in Itaewon. His wife's voice was calm, which was how he knew it was over. His newborn son had spiked a fever of 104 degrees, and for the second time that week, he hadn't answered his phone. The man who missed that call was Kim Joon-ho, a mid-level boss in the Seoul underworld who believed loyalty was everything. But his loyalty was split, to his wife, Amara, and their 6-month-old son, Leo, and to a ghost from his past, his childhood love, Jae-yoon. This is the story of what happens when a man who controls entire city blocks cannot control his own heart, and the devastating price his family pays for his nostalgia. To understand his choice, you have to understand the two women and the two worlds Kim Joon-ho was trying to balance. On one side was Amara. She wasn't just any wife. She was a former nightclub singer from Itaewon who had seen enough gangsters to know she never wanted to marry one. But Joon-ho was different, or so he made her believe. He courted her not with intimidation, but with a quiet, persistent sincerity that disarmed her. He showed up after her shifts with hot tea, not champagne. He remembered her mother's birthday in Ghana and sent a wire transfer before Amara even knew it was coming. He promised her a life apart from his work, a clean apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a normal family. When she became pregnant, he cried. And for the first year of their son Leo's life, he seemed to be keeping his word. He was present. He changed diapers at 3 a.m. He had a photo of his son's ultrasound as his phone wallpaper, a brazenly soft move for a man in his line of work. But the other world was always there. Joon-ho ran protection for a network of nightclubs and underground casinos in Gangnam for the Jumseong faction. His title was team leader, but his power was real. He commanded 20 men. He resolved disputes with a look, not a knife. He was respected for being smart, not just brutal. And this world demanded a different kind of loyalty, a blood loyalty. The kind forged in the back alleys of Busan 20 years earlier, when he was a homeless teenager, and the only person who saw him was a girl named Jae-yoon. She was the daughter of a noodle shop owner. She would sneak him leftover mandu at closing time. They weren't childhood sweethearts in a romantic comedy sense. They were trauma-bonded survivors. Jae-yoon's own home was violent. Her father drank. Joon-ho, with his raw, feral anger, became her protector. He took beatings meant for her. They made a pact. They would escape Busan together, but they never did. Joon-ho was recruited into the Jumseong by a local boss who saw his fearlessness. Jae-yoon's family moved to Daegu suddenly. They lost contact. For Joon-ho, she became not just a memory, but a symbol of the only pure, good part of his past, the part before the blood and the money. Amara knew about Jae-yoon. He had told her the story early on, painting it as a closed chapter of childhood pain. What she didn't know was that Jae-yoon had reappeared. It started 6 months after Leo was born. A message request on social media, a profile picture of a woman, elegant and sad-eyed, standing in front of a closed noodle shop. It was her, Jae-yoon. Her message was simple. Joon-ho, I heard you're in Seoul. My life is complicated. I have no one to talk to. Can we meet? For old time's sake. He should have said no. He had a wife, a son. But the pull of that symbol, of being that boy hero again, was magnetic. He told himself it was just one coffee to see if she was okay. That first meeting lasted 4 hours. Jae-yoon's story was a tragedy, a bad marriage to a wealthy but cruel man in Daegu, a divorce that left her penniless and socially ruined. She had come to Seoul to start over but was drowning. She looked at Joon-ho not as a gangster, but as her old guardian. She called him by his childhood nickname, Junie. And in her eyes, he wasn't a mid-level boss with blood on his hands. He was the noble street kid who shared his last coin with her. A secret channel opened, a second phone, late-night texts that he told Amara were work emergencies. Jae-yoon needed help finding an apartment. Joon-ho made a call, and a landlord suddenly had a vacancy. She needed a job. Joon-ho placed her as a hostess at a high-end club his faction protected, a clean, safe place. Every favor was a thread, weaving her back into the fabric of his life. Amara felt the shift before she saw the proof. The distracted silence during late-night feedings, the way he'd scroll through his phone with a faint, sad smile she'd never seen before. The first time he missed Leo's doctor appointment, he blamed a territorial dispute with a rival crew. It was plausible, but the pattern grew. Their first wedding anniversary passed with a bouquet delivered by a courier, not his hand. He was at a business dinner. The real turning point, the one that set the disaster in motion, happened on a rainy Tuesday. Leo had been fussy with a cold. Amara, exhausted, had finally gotten him to sleep when her phone buzzed. It was a photo from a number she didn't know. The image was slightly blurry, taken through a cafe window. It showed Junho. He was leaning across a small table, his hand covering the hand of a delicate, pale woman who was crying. The intimacy in the pose was a physical blow. The caption read, "Does your husband often console other women?" Amara confronted him that night, holding the photo on her screen. Junho didn't deny it. He grew cold, defensive. "That's Jae-yoon. Her husband was abusive. She's alone in this city. What was I supposed to do? Ignore her? You want me to be that kind of man?" He framed his betrayal as a moral duty. He twisted her concern into a failure of compassion. Amara, isolated from her family in Ghana, with a baby in her arms, chose to believe the lie because the truth was too shattering. She demanded he end it. He promised he would. But he didn't. He just got better at hiding it. The missed call about Leo's fever wasn't an anomaly. It was the culmination. That afternoon, while Amara was rushing their burning hot son to the hospital, Junho was across town. He was not handling business. He was hanging blackout curtains in Jae-yoon's new apartment because she said the streetlights gave her nightmares. His second phone was on silent, buried under a tool bag. When he finally saw the missed calls and arrived at the hospital, shamefaced and reeking of someone else's perfume, the confrontation was quiet, deadly quiet. Amara didn't scream. She looked at him, then at their sleeping, medicated son and said, "You have to choose, right now, us or the ghost." Junho looked at his wife's tear-streaked face, at his son's tiny body hooked to monitors, and then at his phone, where a new text from Jae-yoon glowed. "Junie, the curtains are perfect. It feels safe now. Thank you. You're still my hero." He made his choice. He told Amara he would fix it. He swore on his son's life. He left the hospital, got in his car, and drove. But he didn't drive home. He drove to Jae-yoon's apartment. To end it, he told himself, to do the right thing. He knocked on her door. She opened it, her eyes wide and hopeful. And before he could speak, she threw her arms around him, sobbing about a nightmare, about her fear, about how he was the only solid thing in her collapsing world. And Junho, the man who faced down armed rivals without flinching, found he couldn't push her away. He stayed. He held her. He made the choice, not with words, but with his silence. And while he was choosing the past, the present was formulating a plan of its own, because Amara was not just a victim. She was a survivor from Itaewon, and she had friends in places Junho, in his blind nostalgia, had never bothered to consider. As she sat by Leo's hospital bed, she made a call, not to her family, not to the police. She called a man named Kwon, a former bouncer from her singing days, who now ran a private security outfit with ties to a different, more international syndicate. Her message was simple: "I need a background check on a woman named Jae-yoon, find everything, and Kwon, keep it off the books." What Kwon would dig up in the next 48 hours would not be a story of a victim. It would be a blueprint of calculated manipulation, of hidden finances, and of a connection to a rival faction that wanted the Jumseong's Gangnam territory. Jae-yoon was not a lost soul seeking refuge. She was a weapon. And Kim Junho, blinded by nostalgia, had just invited her directly into the heart of his life, and by extension, the heart of his gang's operations. He was walking into a trap, and he had just left his own family defenseless at the point of its spear. Kwon's report landed in Amara's inbox at 4 in the morning as she kept vigil by Leo's hospital bed. It was not a story of a victim. It was a financial audit, a travel log, and a relationship map that painted a picture of cold, professional deception. Jae-yoon's divorce from her wealthy Daegu husband had not left her penniless. She had received a substantial settlement, quietly parked in a Jeju bank account. Her move to Seoul coincided not with a personal crisis, but with the promotion of a mid-level boss in the rival Sangha faction to oversee operations in Gangnam. That boss's name was Park D1, and Park D1, Kwon's sources noted, had been photographed having dinner with Jae-yoon in Daegu 6 months prior. The narrative of the lonely, abused woman was a fabrication, tailor-made to trigger Junho's savior complex. Amara's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was an intelligence operation. Jae-yoon was a honey trap, and her husband had walked into it with his eyes closed, dragging his family and his faction's secrets behind him. Every tender moment, every shared memory was likely being recorded, analyzed, and fed back to the Sangha. Junho's phone, his schedule, his security protocols, all potentially compromised. And she and Leo were now collateral damage, living in a house built over a war zone. She made a decision then. She would not confront Junho, not yet. A direct warning would be dismissed as jealous hysteria. It might even trigger him to run deeper into Jae-yoon's arms, taking more secrets with him. Instead, Amara would protect her son. She began to plan her exit, quietly. She contacted the Ghanaian embassy about emergency travel documents for Leo. She moved small amounts of cash from their shared account to a secret one, amounts she hoped he wouldn't notice. She packed a go bag with Leo's essentials and hid it in a locker at the bus terminal. Her heart broke with every onesie she folded, but the mother in her overrode the wife. Survival was not an emotion, it was a calculation. Meanwhile, Junho was sinking deeper into the fantasy. After the hospital, a guilt-ridden Junho did try to pull back from Jae-yoon. He cancelled their next 2 meetings, citing work. Her response was a masterpiece of manipulation. She didn't protest. She sent a single, heartbreaking text. "I understand. I never meant to be a burden. Be happy with your beautiful family, Junie. You deserve it." It was a checkmate of faux selflessness. It made him feel like the villain. 3 days later, he cracked. He went to her, apologizing for his distance. She welcomed him with tearful gratitude, and in a moment of reckless vulnerability, Junho did something catastrophically stupid. He complained about a specific problem at work, a stubborn club owner who was refusing to pay increased protection money and was flirting with the Sangha faction. Jae-yoon listened with sympathetic eyes, then offered a seemingly innocent suggestion. "My neighbor's brother is a lawyer who handles contracts for entertainment venues. Maybe he could look at your agreement with this man, find a legal pressure point." Junho, touched by her desire to help, agreed. He handed over a copy of the standard Jumseong protection contract. A document that outlined not just fees, but coded language detailing dispute resolution methods, a euphemism for sanctioned violence. It was a blueprint of their operational style. That document was in Park D1's hands within 24 hours. The Sangha now had a direct insight into Jumseong's legal vulnerabilities and enforcement playbook. But Jae-yoon wasn't done. She began gently probing about the faction's leadership. Who did Junho answer to? Was the old boss, Chairman Hwang, still as sharp as ever? Was there tension between the older members and the younger ones like Junho? She framed it as concern for his safety. "I just worry about you in that world. I need to know who you're really up against." And Junho, basking in her concern, shared more than he should have. He spoke of Chairman Hwang's ailing health. He mentioned the ambitious, hot-headed underboss, Co Min, who was hungry for more territory. He gave her the pieces of a puzzle she was sending across enemy lines. The professional and personal traps were now springing in unison. A week after the contract leak, 2 of Junho's collection guys were arrested in a police raid that felt too precise to be random. Their bail was mysteriously high. Then the stubborn club owner suddenly paid his debt in full, but with a smirk. "Tell your boss I got a better offer, one with more stability." The message was clear. The Sangha were moving, using insider knowledge to apply surgical pressure. Junho's paranoia, once a professional tool, now turned inward. He started suspecting his own men. Was the leak coming from his inner circle? He became short-tempered, erratic. At home, he was a ghost. He'd stare at Leo but not really see him. He'd flinch when Amara touched him. The guilt over his neglect and the stress of the business attacks were twisting him. Amara watched this disintegration, her secret knowledge making her an anthropologist in her own home. She saw the enemy's plan working perfectly. Isolate the target, erode his judgment, destroy him from within. The crisis reached a boiling point at a faction meeting. Chairman Hwang, looking frail, demanded to know how the Sangha were anticipating their every move. Co Min, the ambitious underboss, pointed a finger directly at Junho. "Your collections are down, your men are in jail, your sectors are getting soft, maybe you're distracted." The room went quiet. Junho defended himself angrily, but the seeds of doubt were sown. He left the meeting with a clear ultimatum from Chairman Hwang. "Clean up your operations or be cleaned out." Desperate to reassert control, Junho decided on a show of force. He planned a direct, physical warning to the Sanga's New Point man, Park D1, a broken arm, a clear message. He assembled a small, trusted team. He did not tell Jae-yoon about the plan. For once, his instinctive operational secrecy held, but he did see her that afternoon. He was keyed up, agitated, she noticed. She soothed him with tea and quiet words, and in a moment of weakness, he let slip he had an important meeting late that night to fix things. He didn't say where or with whom, but it was enough. The ambush was waiting for them. Junho and his 3 men entered the supposedly empty parking garage under Park D1's office building. They were met not by a lone target, but by 15 Sangha men armed with pipes and knives. It was a slaughterhouse setup. The fight was brutal and short. 2 of Junho's men went down immediately. Junho, fighting like a cornered animal, managed to escape with his driver, both of them bloodied and bruised. As they sped away, one truth was screaming in his mind. It was a setup. They were expected. Someone had talked. His driver, a grizzled old-timer named Minho, spat blood into a rag and said what Junho was thinking. "Boss, that wasn't luck. That was a tip-off. We have a rat." Junho's mind raced through the list of who knew, his inner circle, his driver, and then like a cold knife in his gut, he remembered Jae-yoon. Her calm, knowing eyes earlier that day, her gentle probing about his stress. Had he said too much? No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't. To believe it was to admit he had betrayed his family, his men, and his own sanity for a lie. He told Minho to drop him off a block from Jae-yoon's apartment. He needed to see her, not to accuse, but for the comfort of her belief in him. He needed the fantasy to be real. He climbed the stairs, his ribs screaming with each step. He didn't knock. He used the key she had given him, the one he told himself was for emergencies. The scene inside was not one of a lonely woman waiting for her hero. The lights were low, soft music played, and Jae-yoon was there but not alone. She was standing close to a man in a sleek suit, their posture intimate, familiar. They were laughing quietly over glasses of wine. On the coffee table, next to the bottle, was a burner phone identical to the one Junho used to communicate with her. The man turned. It was Park D1. Time froze. Junho saw the entire story rewrite itself in that single glance. The shared smile between them wasn't one of new acquaintance. It was the smile of co-conspirators, of partners. The childhood sweetheart, the symbol of his pure past, was in league with the man who had just tried to have him killed. The betrayal was so total, so profound, it felt less like anger and more like the world dissolving. Jae-yoon's face went pale, then settled into a mask of cold resignation. The helpless, tearful persona vanished. "Junho," she said, her voice flat, "you weren't supposed to be here tonight." Park D1 smiled, stepping slightly in front of Jae-yoon. "Kim Junho, we were just talking about you. Thank you for the contract samples and the organizational insights. They were very informative." The words landed like physical blows. Junho looked at Jae-yoon, searching for any sign of the girl from Busan. He saw only a stranger. "Why?" was all he could manage to say, the word ripped raw from his throat. Jae-yoon met his gaze, and for a second the mask slipped. He didn't see malice, but a profound, weary bitterness. "You left first, Junie, all those years ago in Busan. You chose the gang, you became one of them. My father died in debt to men like you. This," she gestured between her and Park D1, "this is just the world you made, finally coming back to collect." It wasn't just a faction play, it was revenge, personal, patient, and perfectly executed. She had used his nostalgia as the delivery system for his own destruction. The honey trap was also a poison pill. Junho, shattered and bleeding, had no fight left in him. He backed out of the apartment, down the stairs, into the night. He drove on autopilot, not toward home, but to the only place he had ever truly felt safe in Seoul. The quiet apartment he shared with Amara and Leo. He stumbled through the door, a broken man, ready to confess everything, to beg for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. But the apartment was dark, too quiet. The usual scent of baby powder and Amara's perfume was gone, replaced by a sterile emptiness. He flicked on the light. The living room was neat, too neat. Leo's playpen was gone. The colorful blankets, the scattered toys, all absent. He ran to their bedroom. Amara's closet was half empty. Her suitcases were gone. On his pillow, lit by the streetlight from the window, lay a single envelope. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was not a letter, but a photograph. a recent one taken from a distance. It showed Jae-yoon and Park D-won entering a hotel together weeks ago. On the back, in Amara's precise handwriting, were just 5 words: "I warned you, we are gone." She hadn't just left, she had left knowing the full truth, and she had taken his son with her. The two pillars of his life, the fantasy of the past and the reality of the present, had collapsed within minutes of each other. He was alone. He had lost his family to his lies, and he had handed his faction's weaknesses to its deadliest rival on a silver platter, delivered by the ghost he chose over his own blood. The night wasn't over. As he stood there holding the photograph, his official phone buzzed. It was Chairman Hwang. The old man's voice was like gravel. "Junho, the police just found Minho's body in his car, a single gunshot. The Sangha are claiming credit. They say it's retaliation for your failed attack tonight. They're declaring war and they are saying you started it." He paused, the silence heavy with final judgment. "Come to the warehouse, now. We need to discuss your future with the Jumseong." The call ended. Junho was no longer just a man who had lost his family. He was a liability in a gang war he had inadvertently ignited, summoned to a meeting that sounded less like a discussion and more like an execution. He had paid the price, and the bill, it seemed, was still coming due. The warehouse meeting was not an interrogation. It was a tribunal, and the evidence against Kim Junho was not just circumstantial. It had been curated, packaged, and delivered by someone with intimate knowledge of his every mistake. When Junho arrived, the atmosphere was frigid. Chairman Hwang sat at a makeshift desk, flanked by CO Taemin and 2 senior lieutenants. Spread before them were printed copies of text message logs, financial transfers, and grainy surveillance photos. Junho recognized them instantly. They were from his second phone, the phone he used only for Jae-yoon. CO Taemin didn't wait for an explanation. He held up a photo of Junho entering Jae-yoon's apartment building. "This is from 2 nights ago, the same night Minho was killed. Care to explain what business you had with a known associate of Park D-won while your man was being executed?" Another photo, Junho and Jae-yoon at a cafe, her hand on his. Emotional support for the enemy, Junho, or coordination? Then came the bank records. Small, untraceable transfers from a shell company to an account linked to Jae-yoon. "You've been funding her," CO stated flatly. "Or should we say, you've been paying for information, our information." Junho was stunned. The transfers were news to him. He had given Jae-yoon cash, never electronic transfers. This was a frame-up. Someone had fabricated a financial trail to make his stupidity look like treason. "Those aren't mine," he croaked. "She played me. It was all a setup. She's working with Park D-won." Chairman Hwang finally spoke, his voice weary. "We know who she is, Junho. We have known for a week. We were waiting to see what you would do, if you would come to us, if you would choose your family, your brothers over this ghost." He leaned forward, his eyes like flint. "You did not come to us. You went to her, and then you led your men into an ambush. Minho is dead because of your choice." The realization was a sucker punch. The faction had been testing him. They had let him dangle in the wind to see where his loyalty would fall, and he had failed spectacularly. CO Taemin smiled, a thin, cruel thing. "The Sangha are mobilizing. They're using the story of a Jumseong team leader turned traitor to rally other small crews against us. You've given them a propaganda coup. You are now a bigger liability to us alive than dead." The sentence hung in the air. Junho knew the code. Liability, dead, they were synonymous. But Chairman Hwang, perhaps out of some remnant of affection for the boy he'd raised, offered a sliver of a chance. "There is one way to clean this mess," the old man said. "You find your wife and child, you bring them back publicly, you prove your personal life is not a weapon pointed at this family, and then you bring us Park D-won, alive, you rectify your error with your own hands. You have 48 hours. It was a death sentence with extra steps. Finding Amara, who had clearly planned her disappearance, in 2 days, and then capturing the heavily guarded rival boss, it was impossible. But it was the only thread he had to cling to. He was expelled from the warehouse, stripped of his men, his authority, and his protection. He was now prey for both the Sangha, who wanted him dead as a loose end, and his own faction, who would kill him if he failed. Alone and hunted, Junho's first instinct was to find Amara. He drove to the bus terminal, the only place he could think she might have used. He wandered the chaotic halls, a bleeding, desperate man scanning the crowd for any glimpse of her or Leo's stroller. It was hopeless. He slumped onto a plastic chair, his head in his hands. The full weight of his regret, was a physical pain. He had traded the warm, living reality of his son's laughter for the cold, dead memory of a girl who no longer existed. He had protected a ghost and left his flesh and blood defenseless. It was then his phone buzzed, an unknown number, a text message. It was a photo of Leo, asleep in a car seat, a familiar blanket tucked around him. The message that followed was from Kwan. "She is safe, do not try to find her. You will lead the wolves right to her. Your only chance to ever see them again is to fix what you broke. Start with the woman, she is the key." Kwan Amara had her own guardian angel, and he was right. Jae-yoon was the linchpin. She had the evidence that could clear Junho of treason with his own faction. She was the connection to Park D1. She was the source of the poison. To have any hope of survival, let alone redemption, he had to turn her or break her. Junho knew he couldn't approach her directly. Park D1 would have her under tight security now that the cover was blown. He needed leverage. He spent the next 18 hours in a fugue state of desperate investigation, using the last of his personal cash to call in favors from the very bottom of Seoul's underworld, information brokers, hackers, and junkies who saw things. He learned two crucial things. First, Jae-yoon's father hadn't just died in debt. He had been killed in a collection beating by Jumseong enforcers 20 years ago. It wasn't just any gang she hated. It was specifically his gang. Her revenge was even more personal than he'd imagined. Second, Park D1 was not her lover. He was her handler, and he was growing tired of her. The Sangha boss saw her emotional history with Junho as a liability. He was planning to phase her out, to discard her once the Jumseong was sufficiently damaged. Jae-yoon was in as much danger as Junho was. She just didn't know it yet. This was the crack, the shared status as a disposable asset. Junho formulated a brutally simple plan. He would make contact, not to plead, but to propose a mutual survival pact. He waited until the pre-dawn hours, then used a stolen delivery scooter to approach her building. He bypassed the front door, scaling the fire escape to her floor. He knew her window lock was faulty. She'd complained about the draft. He slipped inside, silent as the ghost he had chased. He found her in the living room, awake, staring at the very curtains he had hung. She didn't scream when she saw him. She just looked exhausted. "Come to kill me, Junie?" she asked, her voice hollow. "No," he said, keeping his distance. "I came to ask you a question. What did Park D1 promise you once I was destroyed, once the Jumseong were weakened? What was your prize?" She was silent for a long time. A clean slate, a new identity, enough money to disappear. "And do you still believe him?" Junho pressed. He took out his phone, showing her a grainy audio file he'd bought from a hacker. He pressed play. It was Park D1's voice, talking to an underling. "The woman has served her purpose. Once the Jumseong respond to the hit on their man, we'll tidy up. She's too connected to the target, a loose end." Jae-yoon's face, already pale, went ashen. The last of her composure crumbled. The weapon realized she was, after all, just a bullet to be fired and forgotten. Junho moved in, his voice low and urgent. "He will kill you. My people will kill me. We are both dead, unless we give them a bigger problem. You have evidence. The fake bank transfers they framed me with. Recordings of your conversations with Park D1 planning the ambush. Give that to me. I give it to my boss. It proves my betrayal was manipulation, not treason. It proves the Sangha are led by a man who uses women to do his dirty work. It humiliates him in front of the whole underworld. In the chaos, we both run." She laughed, a broken sound. "Run where? They'll find us." "Not if we have something they want more than our deaths," Junho said, and here he played his final desperate card. "Park D1's operational ledger for the next month. Locations, shipments, payments. I know you have access. You gave him ours. It's the only thing you have left to trade. We take it. We give my faction a chance to gut the Sangha operations. In return, they grant us a head start. They call off the hunt." It was a monstrous gamble. He was asking her to betray her handler completely, to ignite a full-scale gang war, and to trust the very organization she sought to destroy. She looked at him, seeing not a childhood hero, but another desperate animal in a trap. Their eyes met in a shared understanding of utter ruin. Slowly, she nodded. She walked to a hidden panel in the wall, retrieved a small, encrypted hard drive. "It's all here," she whispered. "The evidence against you. The plans against your gang, everything." Junho took it. It felt heavier than a gun. At that moment, headlights flashed across the window. A car pulled up silently downstairs. Not one, but two Sangha vehicles. Park D1 had decided to tidy up early. They were out of time. Junho grabbed Jae-yoon's arm. The fire escape. Now. They scrambled out the window as the distinct sound of a door being kicked in echoed from the front of the apartment. They fled across rooftops, two ghosts from each other's pasts, now bound together in a frantic bid for a future. Behind them, the war they had sparked was about to explode into open flame. And Kim Junho, holding the digital seeds of that conflagration in his hand, had one goal left: trade this fire for one last chance to find his family before the city burned down around him. The hard drive did exactly what Junho promised it would. It turned a targeted hit into a full-scale war, and in the firestorm, it bought him exactly 24 hours. He and Jae-yoon, looking like two ghosts who had clawed their way out of a grave, stood before Chairman H-Wang in a different, more secure location. Junho played the key audio files. He showed the forged financial records. He laid out the Sangha's operational timetable for the next month. The old man's face was unreadable, but Co. Taemin's eyes glittered with predatory glee. The information was a gift, a blueprint for annihilation. Chairman H-Wang steepled his fingers. "You have corrected your error," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "But you have also exposed a profound weakness. You are a man who can be broken by sentiment. This organization cannot shelter such a man." He pushed a single envelope across the table. "There is a flight to Accra, Ghana, leaving Incheon in 3 hours. Your wife and son boarded it 2 days ago. Their final destination is Takoradi, her mother's village. That is your head start. We will not look for you, but if you are ever seen in Korea again, you are a dead man. The Sangha will want your head, and we will not stop them. Do you understand?" It was banishment, a merciful one by their brutal standards, but banishment nonetheless. Junho took the envelope. Jae-yoon spoke for the first time, "And me." Chairman H-Wang looked at her with something akin to pity. "You are a weapon that has been used. Park D1 will be dead by dawn. Your usefulness to anyone is over. Disappear. If you do it well, you might get to keep your life." They were ushered out into the cold dawn. At the curb, Jae-yoon turned to him. The girl from Busan was gone, and the woman who remained was hollowed out, a shell. "I'm sorry, Junie," she said, and it was the first completely honest thing she'd said to him in months, for all of it. He nodded, unable to speak. There was nothing left to say. She melted into the morning foot traffic, a ghost returning to the mist. He never saw her again. 3 hours later, Junho was in the air, his body aching, his mind screaming. The Jumseong's information was good. Amara had gone home, to Ghana, a world away from the rain-soaked alleyways and brutal loyalties of Seoul. He had traded an empire of concrete and fear for a one-way ticket to a world he didn't know, chasing the only thing that mattered. Finding the village in Takoradi took another 2 days. When he finally stood at the edge of the small cluster of houses, the sun was a hammer on his back. He saw her. Amara was outside her mother's home, hanging laundry on a line. Leo was in a sling on her back, babbling at a chicken pecking in the dirt. The sight was so ordinary, so profoundly peaceful, it felt like a physical assault. He had no right to approach. He was a curse trying to touch a blessing. He stayed at the edge of the village for a week. He slept in a cheap room at a nearby town and watched from a distance. He saw Amara's mother shooing children. He saw Leo, now healthy, taking his first wobbly steps holding onto a chair. He saw the life he had forfeited playing out without him. The regret was a taste of iron in his mouth, constant and sharp. Finally, he gathered the courage to approach. He waited until Amara was alone, fetching water from the village pump. She saw him and froze. No scream, no tears, just a deep, weary stillness that was worse than anger. "Amara," he said, his voice rough. "You shouldn't be here," she replied, her tone flat. "You bring danger here." "There is no danger. The danger is finished. I am finished." He took a step closer. I needed to see him, to see you, to say I'm sorry." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Sorry doesn't unbreak a child's heart, Junho. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that I sat in a hospital, alone, thinking my son might die while you were playing hero for a woman who was playing you for a fool." She adjusted the strap of the water jug. "I got your messages. The ones you sent before you got on the plane, the long one explaining everything. I read it, and then I burned it. Your reasons are just noise to me now. All I care about is the silence. The silence when you didn't answer your phone. He had no defense. He bowed his head. I will leave if you want. I need to know he is okay. He is, she said, and for a flicker her voice softened. He is perfect. He doesn't ask for you anymore. That sentence was the most painful blow he had ever received. From the house, Leo let out a happy shout. Amara turned. I have to go. Please, Junho begged, the word torn from him. Is there any way at all? Amara looked at him for a long time. She saw the broken man, stripped of his power, his arrogance, his pretenses. She saw the raw, bleeding regret. You can see him, she said finally, once from a distance. Then you leave, you do not contact me, you do not send money, you live with the choice you made. That is the price. That is all you get. It was a crumb, it was everything. He nodded, tears streaming down his face silently. The next day, from behind the cover of a market stall, he watched as Amara played with Leo in the shade of a large mango tree. He saw his son's gap-toothed smile. He heard his infectious laugh. He watched as he stumbled and fell, and Amara scooped him up, kissing his knee. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated love, a love he had been offered and had discarded. He watched until they went inside, until the door closed. He had paid the price. He had lost them. The knowledge was absolute, final, and deserved. He returned to Seoul a month later. It was a violation of his banishment, a suicide mission, but he had one last piece of business. The Jumseong-sanga War had indeed exploded, a brutal conflict that had drawn police crackdowns and rearranged the underworld map. Using every last shred of his old cunning, he located Park D1, who had survived the initial purge and was hiding in a safe house, plotting a comeback. Junho didn't go for revenge. He went for justice. He anonymously tipped off both the police and COT men to the location. The resulting raid was a bloodbath. Park D1 was captured by the Jumseong. Junho watched from a shadowed car as the man who had weaponized his past was dragged away. It was over. He sent one final, untraceable message to Kwon. Tell her the last loose end is tied. They are safe. Then Kim Junho vanished. The official story in the Seoul underworld is that the disgraced team leader was killed in the early days of the gang war, his body dumped in the Han River. It's a useful myth for everyone. But in a small coastal town in Vietnam, there is a man who works as a night watchman at a fish processing plant. He keeps to himself. He sends no letters, makes no calls. In his sparse room, he has only two possessions of note: a single, faded photo of a woman and a baby, and a child's pink sneaker, carefully preserved in a small glass box. A sorry present from a life he threw away. He lives with his regret every day. It is his only companion, and in a way, it is the only thing he has left that he truly earned. The story of Kim Junho is not unique because of the gangsters or the violence. It is hauntingly common because of the choice. The choice to prioritize a curated memory over a messy living reality. We all carry ghosts. A first love, a path not taken, a version of ourselves we think was purer, happier. The danger isn't in the memory. The danger is in the belief that the past is a place we can return to, that it holds a truth our present does not. Junho didn't just cheat on his wife. He cheated on his present. He traded the profound, tangible responsibility of a crying baby for the seductive, weightless fantasy of being someone's hero from 20 years ago. And the price was absolute. Not just the loss of his family, but the loss of his very identity. The boss, the provider, the feared man, all of it was incinerated in the fire of his own poor judgment. What remained was just a man, alone with the consequences. His ultimate punishment was not a bullet, but clarity. The clarity to see too late what he had actually possessed. That is the true cost of nostalgia weaponized by regret. It doesn't just steal your future, it retroactively destroys your past, revealing the good memories you cherished as illusions. So what can we learn from this tragedy? Perhaps it's a simple, brutal reminder. The people who need us most are not the ghosts who whisper from our history, but the living, breathing souls who share our present. They are the ones who hand us a shoe to tie. They are the ones who trust us not to drop them. Their love is not a story we tell ourselves. It is an action we must choose every single day. When we stop choosing them, we are already gone. We become ghosts in our own lives. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the consequences of a single, devastating choice. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the choices you're making right now, drop a comment below. We want to hear your perspective. What would you have done in Amara's position, or even in Junho's? Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more real, raw stories that explore the heart of human conflict. Remember, the past is a place of reference, not residence. Choose wisely.